Welcome to the International Teacher Podcast with your host, Matt the Family Guy, Kent the Cat Guy, Jacqueline from JP Mint, and Greg the Single Guy, bringing you episodes from around the world about the best kept secret in education. You've got it, international teaching. Welcome to the show. This is Greg the Single Guy coming in with the International Teacher Podcast today, and I do have JP Mint with me. Hello, JP.
Hello, good morning from Mexico.
Excellent. And today, JP, I'm excited because we have Marcos Teixeira, and he's coming to us from The Hague, which is one of those top-tier schools that I hear about all the time, and I've never talked to anybody that's actually taught there or admin there or even set foot in the school. So I'm excited. How you doing, Marcos? Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you very much for receiving me over here. Yeah, that's great. It's good to hear.
Great. Where are you originally from, Marcos?
I'm originally from Brazil. So I was born in Brazil, and I hold Brazilian and Portuguese citizenship. So
how does that happen? How do you, because you're not the first Brazilian I know who has Portuguese. Is it something like an understanding between governments?
Well, I got it. Well, there are several rules in Portugal to get citizenships, but I got it it's been already over 20 years through my grandfather, who was Portuguese. Mm-hmm. And then my grandfather came to Brazil, married a Brazilian, actually also my grandmother's parents were Portuguese, and had his sons and daughter, and then he lived all his life in Brazil. Then Portugal started this whole thing of getting European citizenship, right? It's become a certain moment became very, very big. And then I started maybe I should look into that. And because I already had intentions to leave the country and work overseas. And I thought with a European passport would make my life much easier. And indeed, it does. So I started looking into that. And then in those times, the main reason that allowed me to start the process is because my granddad never became Brazilian. So all his papers were at the Portuguese consulate in my hometown. And then basically we just had to do also my dad's paper were not very accurate, and there were errors and things like that, because my dad also was born in Portugal. So we had to, so we had to do a lot of paperwork to get all the papers sorted, and then the recognition of the weddings of both, because my mom was my grandfather from my mother's side was German, but she was born in Brazil. My dad Portuguese, but born in Portugal. So all that took a long time and a lot of money. It cost me a lot of money. So then I got my citizenship on my last year at Coach. So
yes, so Greg, Marcos and I know each other from Coach School in Istanbul. We met, probably 2002, my first year. I think you were already there, right, Marcos?
2000, yeah.
Yeah. So we worked together at that famous school that I've met so many people and so many great teachers.
Marcos, ever since we invited JP to be on our show as a co-host, there's two things that have happened. We find out that she knows the whole world because everybody's taught at Coach at some time, and she's our boss. So she sort of took over the whole show, and all of a sudden we're working for JP, right? And I want a raise, that's for sure.
That's great.
Hey, Marcos, I have a question for you. Since you say you're from Brazil and Portuguese, you have dual citizenship or multiple passports, I'm going to guess a language here for you, okay? I'm going to guess that you speak 5 languages. I'm going to guess English, Spanish, Portuguese, and maybe a German or a French. Maybe even a Dutch.
Well, probably have
Dutch. Forget about the Dutch.
So, am I close?
Really?
Am I close?
Well, definitely Portuguese and English for sure. I consider myself. I mean, Portuguese is my mother tongue, but I consider myself fluent in English. In Spanish, there's something in Brazil that we say that we speak, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but Brazil is the only Portuguese speaking country in South America.
Correct.
So we're surrounded by Spanish speakers. So when we travel to Argentina or Uruguay, Paraguay, whatever, so we always try to speak Portuñol, which is a combination of Portuguese with Spanish, because it's
Awesome.
Espanol. And the Spanish in South America has been modified a lot compared to the Spanish from Spain because of the Portuguese influence and the Brazilian Portuguese, not the Portuguese from Portugal. So that's why it's very close. So I would say that I can manage with the Portuñol. I do understand Spanish, read and listening, understanding. My problem is just the speaking part with Spanish. I cannot do certain sounds and also the grammar part. French, it is easy. I have to say, French and Italian are very easy for us for several reasons, grammatically, and they're all the romantic group of languages, right? And I did study French for a couple of years back at home in Brazil when I was younger, but I cannot speak because I used to, but now I never use, right, French. Jacqueline probably she's much better. Probably no, she's much better French. She's a French teacher, for God's sake. Then I managed to learn a bit of Turkish when I was in back in Istanbul. It's funny enough. Every time I go back, I actually manage. It seems that the Turkish comes back to my mind, so I can get by. I cannot have like a proper conversations with Turkish people, but I can survive very well over there.
Once you settle back into it, yeah.
Yeah, once you're a few days back and it seems like back 20 years ago, right? And Dutch I have to say Dutch has been the most difficult language ever. When I first arrived here 20 years ago, I took some Dutch lessons in the school with a Dutch teacher, like we used to have a coach, Turkish, English, and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say, I don't find a very attractive language at all.
And you have to embrace a language in order to learn it. You have to sort of
I know.
right?
I understand that, and I try my best, I have to say. But living in The Hague, and where everybody speaks English, so every time you try to speak Dutch, they go automatically to English. The Dutch likes to show off a little bit that they know lots of languages, to be honest with you.
I have a feeling we're going to be drafting a couple of letters of apology.
Yeah. Well, I have
It's
to
just,
draft a letter of apology to the Germans too. They love it when people speak English with them, but I speak German. Hey, I know, Marcos, I know 5 words in Hungarian. Can you believe that?
okay.
5 whole words. So if I had to go through a lesson or something, I could say, I love you, thank you, you're welcome, goodbye, hello, right?
I
And
can
that
say
first one's for the
Dutch.
yeah, exactly. It's like you're Dutch. Yeah. But
That's cool.
living overseas, we don't always learn the host language because
Yeah,
we teach in English or other languages
yeah,
based on our school system, right? And
correct.
it's one of those great things that you can teach anywhere in the world. In our school system of the world, you can teach anywhere because
Mm.
you're
Yeah.
fluent with English, right?
Mhm.
Your language is, I have to restate that because your English is fluent, right? I love that.
Thank you.
Hey, listen, let's step back for a second and
Yeah.
let's get your elevator version of how you got into or how you got to where you are now.
I'll try to be as short as possible. Then we go back in Brazil, 1989. Yeah, is when I graduated from university. I did a bachelor's in computer science, and I was working for an Argentinian multinational. So I was a system analyst, and one of the system analysts is in a project we were developing a system for an insurance company. That was 1989. So I started as my internship there. So I started working since I was in the second year of college. I was working there for about 4 years. Then we had a president in Brazil that from night to day, he removed all the money from everybody's bank account and left $50 in there, right? Yeah, yeah, it was a horrible, horrible time. My dad had his first heart attack because a lot of people were really in a bad situation because suddenly all your savings were gone, right? And yeah, because of the problem with inflation, they had all those excuses and explanations for the people, right? It was like starting all over again. So my team, we were about 12, I think. So every month, someone was actually asked to leave because then the companies couldn't handle pay the salaries and everything. So I was actually I stayed 6 more months. So I left the company, and then I started looking for a job. I had just graduated from college, from the university. Not so many years of experience in the area, and so every time I was going through interviews, or it was awful because there are tons of men married with kids willing to receive maybe 50% of what they used to receive those times. And for the newly graduated people, it's so difficult to get a job. So, and I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Because I wanted to get out of my parents' home. And anyhow, so in those times, we looked for jobs in ads in the newspapers, right? We didn't have internet in those times. So I came across a position at the American School of Sao Paulo asking for an IT teacher. I said, wow. And I said, well, let's give it a try, right? So I sent my CV and all that.
Because at that point, Marcos, sorry to interrupt, but you were a fluent English speaker
Yeah.
at that point still? Okay.
I
Wow.
started study. I started in English, taking English lessons at the language schools when I was very young, 10 years old. My father put me in those language schools since I was very, very young because he always believed that English was a very important language that would help me in the future, which also helped me in college because everything in technology is English based, but
Ah,
per
right.
se. No? So I went for an interview. And then I ended up getting the job, and that's how I started my career in education. Loved it, fell in love with education. Teaching high school, imagine I was 22 and I was teaching seniors of 17, 18 years old. So it was really interesting situation. Eh? So I used to dress up very nicely, right? Because to give some authority, like I stayed there 10 years in that school. When I left, I was a director of technology in that school. But since I did a bachelor's in science, I needed to get my teaching certifications, right? The school was American, but they had a Brazilian section, and then all the local hires, per se, the local hires, Brazilian local hires, they needed to get a teaching certification. So I went back to the university, did 1 year of educational credits in the evenings and working full time, and that's how I got my certification to be legally a high school teacher in technology. So in those 10 years, I basically saw many foreigners coming and going, and I said, wow, what a life! You do what you love to do. You travel the world. You live for free. You eat for free in the school. I mean, I was like, for God's sake, this is heaven, right?
How do I
It's the
sign
best
up?
kept secret in education,
Yeah.
international education.
And then I was like, wow, am I going to be able to do this? But I was holding just a Brazilian passport. I couldn't. Most of the people would say, oh, how are you going to prove that you know how to speak and teach in English? I said, well, for God's sake, I'm teaching. I mean, I have my supervisors and everybody. But anyhow, so 1 year, I have a dear friend of mine. She's Canadian also from Winnipeg, Christine. And Christine, she's a math teacher, and then she went to ISS workshop in another international school in Sao Paulo. And then she came back and said, Marcos, this is your chance. You've been, you're so eager to go overseas and all that. I just heard that for technology, because technology was booming in those times, right? And then they said they don't care. They need technology teachers. And as long as you can teach and you have the experience and you have English and everything, so I think you should try. So I said, okay. So can you help me with that? So I spent a fortune to get all my certifications and university transcripts and everything to English, got my equality of teaching certification and course from the U.S. To be considered to join a job fair. So, and then the guy from Search, never liked him. He never accepted me. He said, "No, I don't work with Brazilian people." So okay, and ISS actually accepted, and I went to my first job fair, and it was when I got the job at Coach.
Where was
That was
that,
in
Marcos?
Washington D.C. And so Christine was also going, so we shared a room. And my director was there too from Sao Paulo, and I got three offers. I got two in Turkey, one from Robert College and one from Coach, and another school in Venezuela. And then I said, Venezuela is too close by. So actually, it was a great decision. Those times, Venezuela was still doing okay. And then I negotiated with John Chandler, my master's program.
Hmm.
And I said, I'll come to you if you pay my master's. He said, this is not a problem. So he said, okay, where do I sign?
Wow.
So that was it. So my life just like this, right? And
Yes. John Chandler also was my first step into
really,
international. Thanks, John Chandler at Carney and
see,
Sando, because I met him at the Queen's Job Fair
it's,
in Canada in 2001, and he changed my
yeah,
life. So, yeah, can you imagine how many more teachers out there
yes,
international teachers that
yeah.
he like birthed out into the universe? So, thank you,
No,
Never heard
John
Marcos.
of him.
was,
So,
yeah,
no, no, no. I mean, he was a coach for years and years, and then he went to Robert College, and then he retired, but semi-retired because then he went to Carney and
yeah,
Sando. But
yeah,
Marcos, can you tell us? Can you tell us then? Because you negotiated, because I think did they both know that Robert College and Coach were kind of vying
right.
for you? You negotiated that masters. Can you tell us a little bit about that masters and where did you go for
Yeah.
that?
So the thing is that I wanted to have a degree from either UK or the US. So I negotiated masters, and then I said to him, I don't know where, I don't know what, but I would like to do it. He said, "You come to us. We have connections with certain universities. There are some teachers already doing some master's programs, and I can help you out. I'll just I'll give you the information, and then you can pick whatever you want." And I said to him, and then I said, but I don't have to pay back like staying 10 years a coach, right? He said, no. If
Mhm.
you decide to leave, you leave. You don't need to, because you graduate, you have to stay 2 years here. Anyhow, because my whole issue at the beginning, and I think it was for many people of us there at Coach, was living on campus. That was really a problem for me. So I knew I would have to put up with that. But my first thing was having the experience overseas, and also get the master's degree, because I thought after having a master's degree in English, from an English or an American university institution, that my life would be much easier. And indeed it became much easier, because then I wouldn't have to prove that I can speak English and all that. So it was very funny. It was my mentality because of my situation. Huh? In the meantime, I was doing all my Portuguese paperwork to get the Portuguese citizenship. And Robert College, I tried to negotiate the same thing, but Robert College said no, we don't do that. So that was, I love the guy. I forgot his name. I mean, he was. Both of them were very nice, and I needed something that would help me to make the decision. Then that was it.
I love that because you negotiated for
Yes.
yourself, with your 10 years of American School of
Yeah.
Sao Paulo. You negotiated for yourself, you advocated for yourself back in a time when probably not too many people thought about advocating for themselves, right? They just thought, hey, I'm getting a job offer from two great schools and let me just jump at it.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad you did that. And I'm so glad that you stayed at Coach School. You talked about the on-campus housing. So I stayed on campus for 8 years. I absolutely
Right.
loved living on campus, but it's not for everyone. It is a goldfish bowl. And Greg, I heard you guys talking about that on one episode as well with where you are. It's a goldfish bowl. and it suits some people and it doesn't suit others. But you did eventually move off campus because I do remember you had a beautiful apartment. Was it on the Asian side, I think?
Yeah, in the Asian side. Yeah, it was in the Barlar Jadasi.
And so how long did you end up staying at Coach?
So
How
I
many
stayed
years?
a coach 4 years. So Stephanie, myself, our dear friend Rocky, who passed away already. So we all left on the same year, at the end of the same year, and it was a funny moment because I used to well, then we had internet and all that, so I started sending. Then Search accepted me after that.
Finally, they accepted
Finally,
you, and you're
so
like, "Oh,
yeah,
search, now I'm somebody."
now I'm someone who that now I'm
Hmm.
overseas, so now it's okay, right? So I signed up with Search. Um, I forgot his name. He's not doing that anymore. He used to live in Thailand. And so I used to send my CVs to certain schools and blah blah blah, and I never heard from them. And I was like, that's it. So the day I was flying the evening to London, and then John called me on Friday in his office, and then John Chandler, and then he said, "So how's everything going and with your search and all that?" I say, "Hey, John, I don't know. I think I'm staying one more year because I haven't heard anything from schools. I've sent my CV and nothing, nothing, nothing. So much different than the job fair 4 years ago when you hired me." And he said, "Oh, don't worry. We were instructed not to be responding to emails or CVs because they are scared that the idea of having a job fair at a certain hotel and all that will probably, and that's probably what it's happening nowadays, right? Even though they still continue doing that, but they wanted to keep that. So then if people would negotiate jobs online, then they wouldn't have to go to London anymore and fly and pay hotel and all that, because they have those packages, but that Search does and all that. And he said, "I'm quite sure when you get there, you're going to get lots of invitations for interviews and all that."
What are you saying? So, what if I understand it right? When you were getting closer to
Yes, that was
the
the day
job
before.
fair and you were getting more like you're freaked out, you're like, no one's returning my emails. The job fair is coming up, but it's almost January. The jobs are going away, or February. And you get that feeling. And I've been to several job fairs where you have that feeling, like, I've been reaching out, but no one wants me.
Yeah.
And your superintendent at the time was
Yep.
reassuring you, saying,
Yep.
"Don't worry. Some schools wait till they actually meet you in person."
I
And
know.
and
Yeah.
that turned out to be true, right? Because when you got to the job fair that year, what
When I got to
happened?
the job fair, I arrived in the evening in the hotel. I had like 12 invitations for interview.
See, everything was waiting for you. They were
Oh,
waiting to meet you in
Exactly.
person, right?
Unbelievable. Yeah. I was like, and then I said, well, and then I always liked John. For me, he was always like an angel. That everything that he said was actually, and I emailed him very quickly at night. I said, "Thank you. You calmed me down, and you were totally fine. I have 12 interviews tomorrow." And then he replied with, "Okay." So yeah, so it was great. I had lovely interviews, met lots of different people. It was really really nice. But my goal, it was to come to Europe, and the main reason why is because of my Portuguese citizenship. Because eventually I wanted to end in Portugal. I don't know why, but I don't know. I feel very connected to my family in Portugal, to my
Back to your
grandfathers.
roots. Yeah.
And yeah, so I wanted to have the experience of living in Portugal and all that, but so I wanted to come to Europe. So once in Europe, it would have been easier the next step. And yeah, so I interviewed with China, with Kenya, with Hanoi, with Vietnam. I mean, lovely people, wonderful people. And then I ended up getting several offers. Actually, I got an offer from Ukraine. Thank goodness, I ended up not. I didn't go there, but the guy was very nice. Because for me, it's not about Well, I had an idea of a location, but the main thing was to find someone that I would feel comfortable working with. So that is, for me, that's a major thing. So of course you can research about the school, read about the school and things like that. And but then the final contact, face to face, is very important. So there are a couple of people that I thought, well, I can work for this guy or for this lady. I can do that. And I got from China, a school in Beijing, and I don't remember. I think it was Western Academy, if I'm not wrong. I
Web,
got
yep.
from Vietnam, the United Nations one,
In Hanoi, yep.
Hanoi, and I got from Kenya and from The Hague and Amsterdam. I got from Amsterdam and The Hague. And then I was like, well, looking at the position and what they were offering and things like that.
So walk us through that process because this is really fascinating, especially right now, Marcos. I'm getting a lot of clients writing me saying, okay, I have an offer. I'm not sure how to, sort of weigh the options of two offers. So walk us through because now you're talking about something like 5 or 6 offers. So how do you start to eliminate them?
And it was funny because since I had so many interviews, I couldn't have everything done in one day. So I had Cairo and China on the next day. My first interview was with Ukraine, and the guy offered me the job right away. And I was like, well, I was really surprised with that because usually they don't do that. They ask for another interview, right? But for me, he gave me the impression that he was a little bit desperate because in technology, it might be more difficult to find than a math teacher, for example, right? And some countries have these rules that you have to have a degree in the course that you're going to be teaching. Like Turkey is one of them, and Portugal is another one actually. So that is it was really for me was a very positive thing, right? So I don't know Ukraine. I never had a chance to ask. He never said it, but I said to him, "I'm sorry, I cannot." I said, "You're the first one I'm interviewing with." And I mean, I don't want to. I want to be able to interview with everyone that invited me for an interview before I'm making a decision. He said, "Oh no, that's okay, that's okay." And then he played. Played, or maybe he was right. And he said, "Because I have another second option, but for me, you're the first one." And I say, "I appreciated that. Thank you very much, but I cannot say to you until. I mean, I have interviews until tomorrow." So, and he said, "Well, I'll call you tomorrow morning."
Okay. So do you give you like 24 hours to think about it
Kind
at
of.
least? Yeah.
Yeah, a little
Good.
bit less than
Yep.
that. Yeah. And that's okay. So I went through the other interviews and all that. And then I had a second interview in the evening with Hanoi and with Kenya. Lovely lady. Oh my God, I forgot. I'm getting old. After COVID, my memory is gone. I suffer with COVID. But she was amazing. No, gosh, that woman was great. So I interviewed twice with them. And then 5 o'clock in the morning, my phone rang in the room. It was him. I was like, I said, I'm sorry, I cannot make a decision. I still have a couple of schools today. I said to him, as I mentioned to you. And then he said, well, then I'll have to propose to the second. I said, well, then
At
I
5
had the
a.m. he called you? At 5 a.m. he said,
Is he
hey,
in
did you think
London?
about it overnight?
I was sleeping. I almost at 5 o'clock in the
Those
morning.
job fairs are intense though. And those
Oh,
guys, and you know what? Before you continue, Marcos,
yeah,
it may have come across as desperate, which sometimes it might be. On the other hand, I do know that some of the job fairs, you get into a situation where the school goes there specifically headhunting, and you're like number one on their list, right?
mhm,
So he might have already, vetted you. He met you in person, had a great idea, said, oh my God, I want you. Let me give you an offer. And it takes you by surprise. But if a superintendent goes to that job fair with you or somebody in mind as number one, it's not out of the park to just
yeah,
offer that night right before, even before the job fair starts. They might connect with you and offer. So, yeah, you're right. I mean, you might have a feeling of desperation on their part, but on the other hand, it might
yeah,
just be that you are that person that they
yeah,
wanted right
you're
off
right.
the bat.
You're the puzzle piece that fits the
Yeah,
puzzle,
no
right?
kidding. What an exciting time. So that's 5 a.m. and you still haven't
5
even done
a.m.
like
I was like,
the third and fourth and fifth schools you haven't even gone with yet,
I know.
right?
And and another one was Qatar. Qatar was another one that I interviewed, and she was a lady, and she found me at 6:30 in the morning, asking me for. She also offered me the position of first meeting, and then she wanted to know, by 6:30.
The first day of those interviews, for the most part, at the bigger job fairs, I call them the big three, like you and I and Search and ISS. Queen's University's in there too, but I think.
Toronto search, yeah.
And
So,
what they do is your first day is just this, half an hour first interview with school after school after school if you have the opportunity, and they get to know you in the first half hour. It's just like a meet and greet, warm, lukewarm, maybe you're hot, I don't know, it's cold. But then you might even have a second interview that night
Hmm.
before you even have a first interview. So you're juggling, here's a school that gave you an offer, here's a school you haven't met yet, you haven't even talked to them yet,
Mhm.
and here's
Correct.
another school that has given you a first interview, and then here's two other schools have given you second interviews, and that's just the first like evening.
First
It's
day.
like, whoa, roller coaster. All right, let's take a moment for a little commercial about how to get in touch with us. You can, of course, find all four of us at the itpexpat.com. That's www.itpexpat.com.
Or you could also find us at email at internationalteacherpodcast@gmail.com. We look forward to hearing from you.
Or if you're into Facebook, we have a new Facebook group at www.facebook.com/groups/ITPexpat, where you can find all kinds of inside information about ITP Expat.
You can also find us on Instagram at ITPXpats. That's with an S. ITPXpats is our handle.
All right, and thank you, listeners. We have over 100 countries represented by our listeners, and though we're not monetized, we are here for you, and we would like to thank.
Yeah, it
all
is
of
a
you for
roller coaster.
listening.
It is
So let's
really,
get back to the show.
yeah.
But you
It is
woke up at
crazy.
5 a.m. and 6 a.m. and had phone calls saying, "So
And
did you
had
make a
offers.
decision?"
Yeah, exactly. I was like,
Yeah.
I just woke up with a phone call, for God's sake. Anyhow, so,
Let me have some
like,
coffee
if you're
first.
going to
Come
go
on.
be a recruiter in those job fairs, please don't do that. 5 o'clock in the morning. Jesus.
I mean, I could understand if he was in Kiev, because then, a different time zone perhaps, but my gosh, if he was himself in London, what was he
I don't
thinking, that
know.
you were just, hanging out in your room thinking, yeah, maybe I'll go to Ukraine, and he wanted to know.
Maybe because you don't sleep enough, right? Because you go back to your room and then you have to analyze all the offers, compare everything. It is
And
so
you're
crazy.
looking at a map in your room going, "No,
Yeah,
where's that place again?" They just said, I just talked to them.
yeah.
I tell you one thing though, I bet anything you keep meticulous notes. I know JP Mint would when she goes to these job fairs.
Mhm.
Marcos, are you the same way? I have a
Oh yeah,
spreadsheet in front of me. You're a
oh
techie.
yeah,
You must have a
oh yeah,
spreadsheet with
yeah.
as much as possible.
Yeah. First, I create
Wow.
everything I created before the fair because you have the major. I mean, I think this is a good hint for Jackie, but in technology, it's usually like high school IT or middle school IT or whatever, but you don't know exactly what that middle school or high school IT means, right? Because you don't know what the school actually teaches in that. So in those times, maybe now we share curriculums online, and the curriculum is online, and you can take a peek on the curriculum and all that. But you never know what the school's intentions are in relationship to technology. Now, when you're French, or if you're math, or if you're English teacher, there's not that much change in curriculum because it's pretty much the same. But in technical, I don't know if Greg feels the same way, but it's just like, okay, one school wants to focus on one side of the technology, the other one is. So I was like, I needed to know more before making a decision because, for example, I was never into robotics. My thing is software development, so I like coding. I like to teach kids how to program, mainly girls. That's my main point. And I was like, okay, no, if it's a robotic, if it's a make space type of thing, that's not for me. So, but I can only find out this when I'm having a chat with the director of the school.
Second or
And
third interview, in fact, because then they go deeper. Because that first one, it's like a dating
Mhm.
game the first half hour.
Like a cocktail
Yeah,
party, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
So you need to know the details in order to, right? Because, for example, I never ever taught elementary or middle school. I always taught high school. And I like high school. That's my thing. I love the old kids. If your school says, "Oh, you have to do teaching technology from K to 12," not for me. So you know what I mean. So I like to do things that are, and mainly now that I'm older, but I want to enjoy it, right?
So did you wake up that morning at 5 and 6 and said, hi,
5
these
and
people
6.
know, and then you had some more interviews with some other schools and second interviews and maybe
Yeah.
thirds that day?
Yes, and I only made a decision at the end of the day, the second day, when I decided for the Hague. And that was because they wanted to start the IB computer science, and that was something that I had experience with, and develop the IT curriculum in the high school. So that was the perfect fit per
So they
se.
wanted you, yeah, the perfect fit's important. So you wanted the
Finding the right
yeah,
fit.
right. So you wanted the IB, the International Baccalaureate diploma level of
Yeah,
your field, and
correct.
that's what set it apart, and that was part of what your puzzle was, right?
Yeah.
And they came through with it. What a great school! It sounds like. I mean, they're a top tier school, and people don't like to say top tier. Some people are like, well,
Or tier
or tier
one.
one or
Tier
tier
one is
two.
yeah.
But I think of the Hague as a triple A school, right? Well, did you make
Mhm.
your decision that night then and tell him right away or her?
Yes, I did a decision that night. I interviewed with her in the morning, and then I had another interview in the late afternoon. She offered me the job, but she said to me, love that woman. She's not there anymore. But she said to me, "You're not going to say yes or no, Marcus. You're going to go back to your room," she said, "and you're going to evaluate everything. And I'm waiting for your call within an hour and a half or two." I don't remember, it was an hour and a half or two. I said, "Oh, with a yes or no. If it's a yes, I will ask you to come back and sign the contract. If you
Good
say
for
no,"
her.
she said, "thank you very much. I really appreciate your time, and you're, lovely woman." And then that's exactly, she was the, I think she was the last one, if I'm not wrong. Or was China? I think I had one more. So basically, I went back, and then you evaluate people, evaluate salary, benefits, all that, right? Qatar was out already because it was Saudi Arabia. I mean, Middle East. I didn't want to go. I wasn't ready for China going to Southeast Asia. I wanted Europe, so I eliminate per area first. I had basically The Hague and Amsterdam and Munich, and I made the decision by comparing packages and possibilities and what my role would that be and blah, blah. So that's it. That's how I ended up. I phoned her and said, "Yes, I'm coming to you." She said, "Okay, good. So can you come back and sign the contract?" I did. She shook hands, said thank you, and then she said, "Are you going?" Because I was also doing the ECIS fair, which was a few days later. So I was staying in London until then, and then she asked me if I was doing the ECIS fair. I said yes. Well, not really. No, I said to
Not
her.
anymore.
Mhm.
She said
Yeah.
to me, "Can you please do me a favor and send an email to the guy
That
yes, yeah,
organization.
saying that you're not going to be part of it because you already signed a contract here as such." And I said, "Sure." So I went back to my room and I prepared my thank you notes to everybody, and I went to every
Mm.
single room, put a thank you note under the door.
Can I just interrupt again? The thank you notes, did you specify in that thank you note you're going to Ash, or did you just thank them for their
No, I
time?
didn't say I was going to Ash. I just said it that thank you very much that I had made a decision for another school. I didn't say Ash.
Sometimes
Okay.
it depends on your relationship that you have made with the representative, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And I really applaud you for, and I think those of us that go to job fairs know how this works, is that you have to immediately, after you make your decision and after you sign on the dotted line, that's when you immediately
Mhm.
go back up to your room and
yeah,
write out thank you notes. Or I have a method where it depends on my relationship. Like, were they waiting for me to make my decision? The other
mhm,
schools. And if I had 2 or 3 that I had really talked a lot with, and I was trying to say, "Oh my god, I don't know if I should go here or there," if they're really contenders, then I
mhm,
would go and talk to them in person. And I would immediately say, "Can I
Mm.
talk to you for a couple minutes?"
mhm.
If it was just like a one-off, like I only talked to them like once or maybe for a couple
Yeah,
minutes, I would just send them an email or send them a thank you note in person. But,
yeah,
these days, man, I would try because, those other people you interview with, you've built a relationship with them, They're waiting to hear what you have to say, especially if they gave you an offer. That's the kind of person you want to go in person and say, thank you for the
Yeah,
offer. Remember me next time. I'll keep you in mind because we already went through this. They're going to remember who you are.
exactly. And I think that is so important. I didn't do the face to face,
Well,
but
that
I
was just
think that
me.
was, no, I understand. But I think that is very important because I know some people don't even say thank you. I mean, it's just horrible.
Yeah, believe it or
So
not, that's so true.
that is so true, right? So I think, oh my goodness, no, you never know where these people are going to be. Eventually, one of them might end up being my headmaster in The Hague.
Absolutely.
We're a very small community, and we rotate the world, and who knows?
Yeah, some listeners might be shocked to think that internationally, the world is, as Greg sometimes says, it's the smallest district in the world is the world. We all talk, we all know each other, and so if you burn a bridge by letting, as you say, a headmaster or a head of school dangle on the end of a line, and you don't tell them that you've taken an offer somewhere else, and they're just left wondering, that's burning a bridge for maybe your future headmaster who comes in, or if you end up leaving and you want to interview somewhere else. So yeah, you definitely always want to
Yeah,
leave things very smooth, very
right,
professional, and courteous,
exactly. Yeah.
right?
Well, I have a couple things to mention. Let's see, I'm going to backpack a little bit here on what you've already said. It's very important to send at least a thank you note because not only would you offend that person by not saying thank you and I have accepted an offer, please take me off your list. They're waiting around for you if they gave you an offer, which is a verbal, which is usually 24 hours. And if you don't, my main point is you don't just piss off or burn a bridge with that person, but all the recruiters are a bunch of chatty hens. They work together as a team
Oh
and they
yeah.
talk to each other constantly. And all the different job fairs they go to, they'll
Mhm.
say, hey, remember that Marcos guy? He never even said thank you, didn't even let me know. I had to chase him
That's good.
down. Next thing I know, he's in the bar celebrating. I'm like, oh my God. So, yeah, this is something to really think about when you go to these job fairs, especially in person, right?
Yeah.
The other thing I was going to share with you is I have a little different style than you did, Marcos. I've been to 7 fairs now. So
Oh God.
7 job fairs
Mm.
and excuse me, 6 job fairs. And
Okay.
the first 5, I had a golden rule. And I always said, if I got the offer, it was always, can I sleep on it? I always wanted to really make sure that I could sleep on it without any pressure. Sometimes I would let them know before I slept on it, but have no pressure really to think about it on my time. I would sleep over the idea of which school I wanted to accept if I had options. And even if
Mm.
I didn't have options, I still took that 24 hours, that overnight at least. Can I tell you tomorrow morning? And in every single instance, they've always agreed to wait for my or like my idea of waiting and thinking about it, and they actually would think that's respectable. I mean, they know that I'm not just rushing into a decision because if I rush into a decision as a candidate, I might just end up at a place that just doesn't even fit with me. I mean, I can't even believe I'm there
Or you might be doing a
Yeah.
or a
runner
runner in the
down the
first
The
day or
road.
two.
runner.
So
Right.
for me, I really
Mhm.
appreciate the fact that you are one of the people that goes to these job fairs and you are transparent about things. You keep in touch with the multiple recruiters, let them know where you are in your decision making. Yes, I'm looking at this school. I'm looking at another school. And the more open you are, sometimes you might get, I think, in all fairness, you might get some kind of negative reaction from somebody if you mention another school,
Yeah.
especially if they're competing for you.
Yeah.
But in
Yeah.
most cases, I've been very lucky to be transparent with somebody because they know each other. In fact, I had when I sat down with one guy at 1 year, some point in my life, I sat down and said, I can't accept I have taken another position. And he goes, oh, did you just go talk to so and so across the hall? And I'm like, how did you know? He's like, well, we were talking about you before.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Ah,
That
they're
happened.
a bunch
Yeah.
of chatty hens,
Yeah.
right?
That happened in the first fair between John Chandler and the guy from Robert College. They
Robert
both
College.
knew, they were both after me because I had all the prerequisites for them. And when I accepted the coach position, I actually did exactly. I went to talk to the guy at Robert College, and or I bumped into him or something, and I told him what I chose. And then he asked me what was the reason, And I said, well, it was my master's. And I said, oh, I knew it. I was going to lose you because of that. Because you were so sure about this. You wanted so much that. And unfortunately, I couldn't promise you that.
Well,
So
he respected that. He
yeah,
respected that answer. And
yeah,
these guys and these women that are there recruiting us, they know there's a big game that they're putting a big puzzle together.
yep.
And it's great to hear it from your point of view. This episode is a great episode if you're listening about how to work around a job fair. It's not, we don't go too deep into it, but
and how to deal how to deal with multiple offers. So I'm really glad, Marcos, that you kind of talked about your steps. You said you first sort of eliminated geographically what wouldn't work for
Mhm.
you. Then you started considering, well, what is the job itself? And you've made a really good point about doing a deep dive on each of the job offers to know what's the
Mhm.
curriculum, what is the job going to entail day to day. And at any point did you speak to other teachers from those schools? Did you have that
Well,
opportunity?
after I signed with the Hague, we had those weird holidays in Turkey, so I so I came over here.
Yeah, just to clarify, it was like 2 weeks in January. So you're just like, "Okay, end of January is when I'm celebrating Christmas," because we would get Christmas Day off, December 25th, and that was it. So the end of January, I remember celebrating Christmas a few times in Canada in, the end of
Yeah.
January.
So then I came to The Hague, and I actually came to visit the school, and then I
Oh,
met
wow.
the person that I worked all these years, and it was very nice. And I just did now in Portugal, and I went to visit the school, and I talked to the face to.
Foreshadowing, foreshadowing. Marcos is leaving the Hague, but we're going to get into that in just a sec. So you managed to visit the school you were about to move to in sometime like January,
Right,
February, but you were moving in
correct.
July. Oh, that's really lucky. That was
That was
really
very
good.
nice. It was something that I said, let me do it. Yeah, but the most important thing, I mean, that is for me, maybe it's not so interesting for the listeners, but because I was under Brazilian passport, in my mentality, I thought that being a holder of Brazilian passport wouldn't help me that much, right? And that's why I wanted so much of the European passport. But I got all these interviews, all this with only the Brazilian passport because the Portuguese passport only came after my job in The Hague. So I got the job in January, and my passport came only on my birth date, which is April 9th. So actually, I couldn't say that I was Portuguese citizen yet. So I just said I was a Brazilian. So that is the beauty for if listeners are not from originally from an English speaking country, that it is possible to nowadays to go overseas.
kudos to you. That is a
I
great
love it.
point for our
I love
listeners
it.
that are not from the US or
Mhm.
from Canada or some English speaking country, main language speaking country, right?
Well, Greg, and I'm sure you've heard that Europe is difficult to get into if you don't have a European citizenship. But that might be the situation maybe now. But at that time, Marcos, you were able to get hired as a Brazilian
Yep.
citizen, and they were willing to sponsor your visa. Is that right? Until such time they learned you had Portuguese
So after I
citizenship.
got my Portuguese, I contacted the HR department and said, listen, you don't need to worry about visas or work permits and all that because I'm in European now. And they were, really? Oh my God, our life is going to be so much easier now.
They took you out for dinner once you arrived. They were like, "Thank
I'm
you
very
so
good
much. You
friends
saved us so much
with
work."
the HR, the head of HR,
Yeah.
because we go out together and all that. But
Well, the European schools are not all going to be difficult to get into based on being a non-EC, or not, excuse me, a non-EU. It depends on the school, but you're right, JP. There's the European schools are harder to get into now based on your passport, and a lot of them are asking for a EU passport to start.
correct.
But yeah, we can't do anything about that, can we? We can only try, and hopefully they will reach out to us when we're ready, and we go to one of these job fairs and say, "Hey, I'm ready," and let them work it out, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Fantastic.
Can we talk about Ash? I mean, because as Greg mentioned, he's never spoken to somebody from that school. I myself applied. I think you may remember, Marcos. I reached out to you at one point and I said, "Oh my gosh, there's a French position at Ash," and I have to credit. So Dr. Spalding,
Rick
is that
Spradling,
his
yeah,
name?
Spradling. Yeah.
Sprad. Yeah, so I have to credit Dr. Rick, I'll just call him, that thanks to him, I posted a YouTube video that, by the way, has 6,000 views after 20 years. Thank you very much. We could call it
You
viral. But
YouTuber.
anyhow, I posted a YouTube video of me in the classroom, and because it was a French classroom, I had to subtitle it. And it was such an I mean, it was a digital camera that was being held by my colleague, and Kubilai
That
was
could be
holding this thing.
like,
Yeah. So I made this video, I posted it on my channel on YouTube, and I sent it to Dr. Rick and said, I would really love an opportunity to interview with you, to talk to you about my teaching, my style in French. And I have to credit Dr. Rick that I got my next job thanks to that video, because what happened was Dr. Rick said, well, in fact, we're going to be hiring someone who's already part time and moving them into a full time position. So we're not actually looking outside the organization. But because that was a requirement, he wanted to see me teaching. I posted that on YouTube, and then Tazem in Oman saw that video and reached out to me. So I was kind of headhunted for that position thanks to that video. So I've always wanted to go to Ash. It was definitely on my wish list. And so can you walk us through what was that, or what is that like, because you're still there?
it's been 20 years already. So I don't, what would you like to know?
Well, first of all, is it a revolving door? Because you were there 20 years. Do you have fellow colleagues that have stayed that
Oh,
long?
yeah. I mean, um, as you said, Europe, when you get a job in Europe, people just stay until you retire, right? And Ash is
Mm.
a great place. I mean, it's a great school. Uh, we have people, and the colleague that worked with me in the high school IT, I mean, she worked there for 40 years. So it was her first job and stayed there for 40 years. And she retired back to the US. And you will find many people like this. What I like about the school is that the school is very open for diversity. So we have, it's okay for kids to be who they want to be, and I applaud Ash for that, and they respect. Of course, and we work hard within the student body, right? Because you always have the boys that don't like to see a boy transitioning to be a girl, and they dress up the way they want it. They in our enrollment, when you in power schools we say power school, but you have the name of the student, but you have always the name that they want to be called between brackets. So I think the respect for the human being and for the students to be what they want to be, who they want to be, is amazing. I think that also, I personally, this is my opinion, has nothing to do with Ash. I think that we offer too much. There are too many options for students. I think the students get lost with so many options. They don't, because I'm going to be able to speak more about high school than the other divisions, right? But in high school, we offer the IB program, we offer the AP program, we offer the electives and the general America diploma. So I think there's too many. For example, in my case, I do IB computer science, I do AP computer science A. Another colleague now does AP computer science principal. So we try to do a lot. We work hard. I think we do work a lot at Ash, even more than what I used to work at Coach, to be honest. But we push the kids, and they respond well. So it's great. And now that I've been there for such a long time, I get these emails and visits of former students who are opening startups and they want to interview me, they want to know my opinion. Oh, I'm thinking about a master's program. What should I do? Should I do it focus in AI, or should I go software development? It is so much cool to get that recognition. Of course, this is what pays off our jobs. Right? It's the best thing ever is to have that from the students.
You're lucky to be in high school because I work in elementary,
Oh,
and having that kind of feedback when they're in college is very rare. So if every 5 years or so, if I get an email from a student, I'm very lucky. But it keeps me going, though.
it made her day. It makes her day, right? When you get that.
Oh my gosh,
Makes my 5
it makes
years.
my
So, yeah,
year.
exactly. 5 years,
Hmm.
right? So yeah, so it's a great school. There are lots of activities. All the clubs are students led. I mean, they lead the clubs. Arts is great. We do musicals. We have music. I mean, I think the school is amazing in terms of what we offer. And we also, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but Ash was the one that started with Model United Nations in The Hague.
Oh, you're
Yeah, they
kidding.
started there. So all the other schools that have a Model United
Wow.
Nations,
Yeah,
an MUN, it all
Thanks
goes
to
back to
Ash.
you and to Ash. I'm not
yeah,
used to calling the American school the Hague as Ash, but
yeah.
it's like, hey, I know
Oh
Ash.
no?
That's what we call it. That's what we never say America's with it.
Yeah.
It's always that. So we just
Yeah, those of us in the know,
Well, some
Greg,
schools
call
feel
it
very lucky if
Ash.
they're invited to actually go to the MUN if it's hosted at Ash,
yeah,
right? I've heard
yeah,
that several years of different schools I've been to and taught at where the schools have gone and been invited to go see to be a part of the MUN there. That's like the highlight.
yeah. It is. It's a big thing. It's not in the school. It's in a convention center in The Hague, and usually the whole Model United Nations is opened by the King of the Netherlands or the Queen of the Netherlands. It's a big thing. It's really a
Wow.
big thing, and I admire that. It was a history teacher many years ago. Don't ask me when exactly, but he had this fantastic idea, and that they brought to the government, to the Dutch government, and they said, "Yeah, we'll do it." And they've been doing this for years already, for a long time, and it's beautiful. It's really nice. On the other hand, we lose almost 50% of the students for a whole week
Well,
because
listeners, if you want to know more about MUN, all you got to do is reach out to Marcos and he'll tell you all about it. He's been there 10 years.
so that is in everything you have the pro and the cons, right? So you always have to plan your classes very light. So we just
Mm.
finished the module end in Friday. So the students are going to be
Oh,
next week.
that's on your mind. But Marcos, can you now tell us? So, okay, we're ready for this next step of where you're off to, but how did you find this position?
Oh, you mean in Portugal? Um, yeah, well,
What,
Yeah.
you're going to Portugal now? Finally?
Portugal, yeah,
Oh,
Yeah.
it's like the end of
exactly.
the tunnel.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like the happy
Oh,
ever
listen, I
after.
want to
It's
hear him.
end of a
Tell us how
story.
this happened.
I always wanted to go to Portugal, as I said before. So I I need the sun. I need warm weather. I can put up with the cold and everything, but I've been in the cold weather for 25 years almost, right? Turkey and here. And then the main reason of going and work there is because I have a possibility to transfer my pension from Brazil to Portugal. So then I can receive my pension from Brazil in Portugal. Because Brazil and Portugal are brother countries, and there are some rules that they agreed upon. So, but in order for me to do that, I have to work at least 5 years in Portugal. So in August, when I was back to Ash, I talked to my supervisors. I explained the situation. I also asked for recommendation letters, right? And then all of them said, "Oh, that's you might not leave so soon. I mean, it's very difficult." But my thing is that I needed 5 years there. Plus, I'm 50. I'll be 57 in 2 months, and the age is coming. And schools usually have some rules about about age. So a former IB coordinator in our school at Ash, he said, "Marcus, you have to make the move as soon as possible. Otherwise, you will never move if you really want to go, right?" And I said, "Oh, that would be so much better if I could receive the money in Portugal because I want to retire in Portugal." And that was the decision already. So then I started looking online. So going first, I did a research on the schools because I didn't know very much about them. So I did a research. I found all the schools in the region, and then I started looking. And then every Sunday, this time of the day, I would be, going through the website, and then I figure out that the schools in Portugal, they use a platform called TESS in the UK.
Oh
The
yes, the
English, yeah,
English supplement. That's what it used to be called, but now it's
yeah, it's
just
just
TESS.
called
Yeah.
TESS. So I went there, and it was free. So I did all my CV, I fill out all the forms, and uploaded everything that I needed. And then I found, and then TASIS Portugal, the TASIS schools from in Switzerland.
The American School. What does it stand for?
It's American
TASIS again?
International School, right? And
The American School in
Hmm.
Switzerland.
yes, correct. Yeah, yeah, they
No,
TASIS. I
started.
used to
Yeah.
work at the one in Switzerland. So,
Oh,
I
yeah,
know, I know. It is
yeah,
confusing because you have to say TASIS
I know
right. Well, they
Portugal.
have
because it
three
is. It
satellite
is.
schools.
Yeah, it's the same organization. It's a foundation. Right? So
Oh,
they
okay.
start in Switzerland, then they open the one in England, in London, and then they open one in Puerto Rico, and Portugal is the fourth one. They only have those four.
Ah,
And then there was an advertisement on the website saying that due to the expansion of IB, the 11th grade, because they are a brand new school, we're hiring all subjects. I mean, so I just submitted my CV with the recommendation letters. I did for King's College also. So yeah, and within a week, I got offers from both schools actually for the same position, head of computer science. So I'm going to be leading K through 12 computer science, but I'll be teaching IB computer science only thing. Or I might have until they have the full 2 years. I might have to do GCSE as well for ninth and 10th. And yeah, so another perfect situation, perfect fit. You said it was going to take this year, a long time. You got a job in a week. And I told you, Jackie, that you approached me and said, oh, well, it went so
yeah.
fast. And then
I know. I couldn't believe it. You put it out there in the universe. You were like, I would love to go to TASIS. And then a week later, you were writing me going, so I got
was
TASIS.
like,
I
what
was
the
like, what?
heck? And all my supervisors were like, you're very lucky because this is so difficult. So yes, so then
Yeah.
I'm leaving.
The the
I
stars
know, yeah.
aligned.
All my in my life has always been like this. So thank
Congratulations.
goodness, thank goodness. So that's it. Work a few more years at TASIS, and then whenever I retire from Brazil, which is in about 3-4 years, and then I'll stop. You know what? I'm so ready to go and be. We're close to the beach, and I just
You're ready for that
yeah. I need to
sun.
reconnect also to with my language and
Well, it
everything
sounds like
else.
you've come full circle. I mean, you haven't even started that final leg, the last few years, that sunset type of thing, but you did get into a school before you reach 60, which is what we have
Yeah,
to all do. And I'll be
exactly.
looking at that soon too, right? I have at least one more jump after this.
Yeah,
And where am I going to end up before I'm
Oh, you don't
60, right?
have to, though, Greg. I just want our listeners to know that you can still get into a new school after 60. Don't
yeah,
don't
Yes,
worry
you
about
can,
that.
but your
Just
goalposts change
yeah.
a little bit and your options do
Mhm.
become
Mhm.
smaller. It's sort
true.
of like when you first
Mhm.
start out, your goalposts are very close together, and then all of a sudden you have lots of opportunities as you get more and more experience, more people, and then all of a sudden the goalposts come back together again once you get closer to the age 60, and that's not even just because of the schools. It's usually the government and the work visas that start to be a little
Yeah,
bit more
really.
stringent, right, Marcos?
That you're
Yeah.
right. You're right. But it's also, like you said, it positions as well. Because in my case, if I wouldn't go now, which is a perfect fit for IB, starting IB, and I have a baggage of so many years teaching IB and doing evaluations and school accreditation for IB for so many, and the IB office is right here in The Hague, and I just met the guy who is responsible for the computer science program in one of these get-togethers that we have here within the community. So. Yeah, it's just like it had to be at that moment. Otherwise, someone else would get the job, and then I would have to wait, like you said, Greg, a few years, and maybe that would be too late for me. So I needed to take that opportunity at the moment. So, so my colleagues at Ash said, but my goodness, do you know it's a brand, it's a school that's only 4 years old or 5 years. I said, to be honest, guys, I want to enjoy this job. It's not. I don't have more any like I want to be this or that anymore. I'm going down road, so I just want. I want to enjoy more life now. After
Well, the other point is, with a startup, not a startup school. I mean, the school, the TASIS school that's going up there, that's already in place, that's growing.
Yeah, correct.
It's not their first gig. It's their third satellite school. And I used to work at the main school in Switzerland, but no matter what school it is, if it's a startup, that might be something that's interesting to you. Someone else might be interested because you really do get to form that school as if it's going from K through like 9 and then they add high school to it, you're going to be on the foundational time. You're going to be in the foundation of setting up the school to succeed later on. So that's a great opportunity. It sounds like. I don't know much about the options that you have, but wow.
And that's what you're saying, and that is what really attracted me to the job as well, to be able to form that, and that would be my contribution. All this time involved in the IB, teaching computer science and all that, and it's just
and weekends on the beach.
And I also enjoy my drinks, my alcohol spritz on the beach. That would be nice.
Wow, Marcos, this has been absolutely fascinating. I think our listeners are going to enjoy hearing your travel journey, your journey through international teaching. And despite the tiny number of international schools, I mean, we're talking American Sao Paulo, Coach, Ash, and now TASIS. So 4 schools in the span of almost 35-year career. But it's been so great to hear all the ups and downs, sitting on the edge of my seat. What did he go with? And Greg, we've got 2 questions. Do you want to ask
You
Marcos
choose
one
one
of
and
the
I'll
questions?
ask the other.
Okay, so Marcos, we have a history, we have a tradition in this podcast. We always ask, do you have a police story for us in all those times overseas?
I have a police story in Turkey. Which was,
Oh, good. Do it.
Okay.
I don't know if Jack remembers, my car, but my car was a huge car. So I was like trying to beat up the traffic on the bridge. I was driving on that Ebesh. I think it was 120, 130 kilometers per hour because I was, oh my God, I'm late. I don't want to get so much traffic on that because otherwise you're stuck for hours, right? So then suddenly a police stops me. And my Turkish was pretty good at that. It was already the third or fourth year. So I could understand very well Turkish. And then he came with that Turkish way. And I just pretended, sorry, I don't speak Turkish. And I could understand everything that he was saying. But he would repeat it, say, you were over 100, I have to give a fine. And he wanted to step up, asked me to step out the car and blah, blah, blah. And I said, sorry, I don't speak Turkish. I don't understand it. Then he calls a colleague. And then he said, oh, this bloody bastard, he doesn't speak Turkish. I don't know what to do, how to make him get out of the car. I need to check the car for drugs.
He won't get out of the car.
I was like, I don't speak Turkish. I wanted to laugh so hard. But I was like, then the guy said, forget it. Let him go. We will never be able to communicate with this man. And then he started going, like, very Turkish way, like, go. I said, okay, thank you. And then I laughed so hard.
Oh,
I was like, oh my God, I could be
I call
in
that the stupid gringo. No habla español.
Exactly. But it was so helpful because I thought I was really in trouble that day.
Turkish
and then
prison.
The next weekends I was like, okay, Marcus, remember, go, don't go so fast in the highway. So
that's a wonderful story, and it really worked to play the stupid gringo. I love that. No, I can't speak. We'll never get the guy out of the car.
This bloody bastard, he doesn't speak a word of Turkish. And I was like, everything. I was like, okay.
So here's your next question then, and we always do this question. As you're traveling around, as you move from country to country, what are 3 things that you need to take with you or you just need to have when you move to a new country?
That is funny. Well, I have to.
Because you're about to do it. You're about to move to a new country.
Yeah, well, first I need to be connected. I think nowadays it's a little bit different than before, but you have to be connected. So as an IT person, I need to have my computer with me or my iPhone or whatever. I need to be connected to the internet somehow. I don't feel like so pressure about the language per se because I do understand everything. I feel very comfortable there. So that wouldn't be, but if it wasn't a country that I wouldn't know anything about it, definitely a dictionary or something that would help me at the beginning to get by. Let's put it that way. So those things would be, that would be really, really important. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that's what I can think of. But that's basically would be for survival.
That's fantastic. No, that's very truthful, and it's very simple to take care of those 2. Those things that you need to have to go to the next country. I love it. That's all we ask. It's great to share that. If you've listened to our other episodes, you know that she has to have her rugs. JP has to have her rugs with her.
I know.
And,
Yeah, I have mine too.
Yeah.
You have Turkish carpets? I think
do.
everyone, you cannot leave Turkey
I don't
without
need
a carpet
carpets.
or 2.
I need
in your-
ice, maid, and a form of transportation. So, yeah, as long as I could have ice for my drinks and a maid to clean up because I hate
Okay.
ironing, So it's sort of funny, but it's true. And of course, I'm an IT guy like you are, and I have to have my communications, but
Yeah.
they come in a little bit behind those 3.
That's great. That's great.
Greg, we were really lucky to have Marcos on the show today because I think our listeners are going to learn so much from his experience. They're going to enjoy his stories, and Marcos, hopefully, as I promised to you when I was reaching out to you, I think you enjoyed this walk down memory lane as well.
How about last words of wisdom?
You always have to believe that you're going to achieve whatever you're thinking of. For me, it was probably a more complicated procedure to get into international teaching. It was actually by luck, started by luck, because of a situation I was in back home, that I found this wonderful world of international teaching. And but mainly for those who don't have, or they're not from an English-speaking country, don't have a passport from an English-speaking country, believe that you can do. Nowadays, the world is so much different, and just trust yourself and go for it. Just believe, and you will be successful. You will be happy, definitely.
Wow, that's really well said. JP, any last thoughts,
Awesome.
JP?
I want to thank Marcos Teixeira for coming to ITP today, and from Greg the Single Guy and JP Mint here in Mexico. Thank you so much for listening, and see you next time.
And if you're ever on the highway in Turkey, just say, I don't speak English.
I think that's the biggest lesson everybody can learn is if you speak the local language, play dumb. Play dumb. I did the same thing, Marcos. Play dumb.